Gentlemen? There we go. Hey, so we had a little incident outside there. Someone fell down. He's okay. Everything's good. So I do want to make a couple announcements here with Dr. Hunt. He met with the mayors of Parma and Parma Heights this evening prior to this, so he got to introduce himself to them. And he has a meeting scheduled with Mayor Biasiata later next week, I think, or whenever he gets in town, they'll match up. But he is in contact with the city leaders already. So without further ado here, we're going to have Dr. Hunt go ahead and do his presentation, tell us his vision for the schools. And I appreciate everybody coming. And I hope you have some good questions for him later. All right, all yours, Dr. Hunt.
It's on. Oh, it's on. Can you hear me now? You don't have to sit so far back. Please feel free to move all the way up. No movement. That's okay. Thanks very much for being here this evening. I'm Dr. Scott Hunt, the new superintendent here at Parma City Schools. Very happy and excited to be here. And tonight I want to share some information with you about me and what I'm thinking in terms of how we'll move the district forward. A new chapter for Parma City Schools. So, just a quick agenda. I'm going to try not to speak the whole time because I do want to get some engagement and interaction toward the end with some questions and answers. But this evening, again, some introductions. I want to talk to you a little bit about my leadership approach. I want to talk to you about something I discussed during the interview process with the board, which is common ground and how we can reach some common ground for the betterment of students here in Parma. I want to talk to you about some opportunities that I see on the way in the door from the information I've gathered and some of the people that I've had the opportunity to speak to. So I want to share that with you. I want to talk about listening and learning and how I intend to meet with individuals in the district, staff, and stakeholders externally. And then I want to talk about this idea, about this question, is good enough? And maybe we'll get some interaction during that portion of the presentation. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So a little bit about me. This is my 35th year in the field. I know I look much younger than 35 years of experience, right? But I went to Bethany College, which is in West Virginia, the northern panhandle. I grew up in the Youngstown area, a small town called Girard. Any Youngstown folks in the audience? There we go. There's always one, that's why I ask. From college, I had the opportunity to land my first position. I taught 5th grade for 4 years in Naples, Florida. Never had a snow day, ran from a hurricane or two, but it was beautiful there. It was my first job directly out of college. While I was there, I got my master's degree from the University of South Florida in education, but my focus was guidance and counseling. And my aspiration at that point in time was to be a guidance counselor. I did my doctoral work at Nova Southeastern University, and my degree is in education with a focus on organizational leadership. And so my journey, I taught for 8 years. So 4 years in Florida. I taught for 1 year in Cleveland Metropolitan Middle School, multi-subjects. From there, I went to Beechwood City. I was there for 4 years. Excuse me. I taught 8th grade science, did some elementary school counseling. And the last year I was there, I opened up their occupational work adjustment program for high school students who were struggling but needed a pathway to get to a job or a career. I've had the opportunity over 35 years really to get some of the best professional development and training, as well as the educational pieces that has helped shape my approach to how I lead and how I will lead here at Parma. And so it's really a three-pronged approach. These are things that I believe very strongly. One is collaboration and teamwork. I'm a collaborator. I tend to ask questions. I want to be part of the team as we problem solve through the many challenges that we'll face. And so I'm going to collaborate, but I'm also going to focus on building strong, high-functioning teams in the district. Very important to me. I'm never the smartest guy in the room, and it's good to surround your people who have with people who have different perspectives that you may have on your team. And I know that I've spent some time already with some of the senior leaders here in the district, and we're going to make a great team because we have to. Data-based decision-making, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. It's very important that we use data to make our decisions, and it's also important that we are aligned to our strategic plan, to the state standards, and to the board priorities. Raise your hand if you've heard of Patrick Lencioni or this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Some of you may have. It's a great read, and I don't want to gloss over, but basically this is a story, it's a fable about a CEO who steps into the CEO role for the very first time and has to overcome the dysfunctions of a team. And that individual has to pull that team together so that they can run a high-quality business. And there's a triangle here I want to walk through. So every relationship that we build, the foundation is what? Trust, right? So one of the dysfunctions is absence of trust. And so as a new person coming into the district, working with senior leaders, board, community, it is incumbent upon me to build trust. And when we're building our teams, you have to have trust. So we'll have to find ways to overcome the absence of trust. And the way I describe this during the process is you have to do what you say you're going to do. And so I will do that. If I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And if I can't do it, I'm going to tell you, I told you I was going to do this, I can't do this, and here's why. So we have to overcome the absence of trust. The other dysfunction is conflict. There are conflicts that happen every day in any organization. Some are small conflicts, some are major conflicts. But we have to hit conflict head on. And this is why it's important to overcome that first dysfunction, trust. We have to build trust so that we can deal with whatever the conflict is. And so we're going to talk about how do we overcome the fear of conflict and how do we problem solve to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the students that we serve and the families that we serve. That middle dysfunction, lack of commitment. And one thing I learned along the way is I've always had folks ask me, how are you going to get people to buy into what you're doing? And I've kind of changed my thinking on this, and I used to explain, here's what I'm going to do to get buy-in. Now, I don't want you to buy in. I don't want anyone to buy in until we deliver some result to you. So what I will ask and what I will expect is that people will commit to doing the work that we need to do. It starts with commitment, right? It starts with commitment. So we have to have commitment to do the work. Then when we get results, and they're good results, then we could celebrate that, and then you could buy in. So we have to overcome the dysfunction of a lack of commitment. So I will be asking folks in the district and the community to commit to the work that we're doing, because the work that we're doing isn't for us, it's for the kids we serve every day here. Avoidance of accountability, and this one comes up a lot. What does that mean, accountability? Kind of goes back to that idea around trust. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, and you're on my team, and I fail to do it, you better hold me accountable to it. You better talk to me about what I said I was going to do, why I didn't do it, and how I can do it better, or make the commitment to do what I said I was going to do. Accountability comes in many forms, but I believe the best way to attack that is to make sure we set high expectations for everyone, students included, and that we hold them to those expectations. And when folks aren't meeting the expectations, then we should be able to have a critical and crucial and courageous conversation about accountability and what it is they committed to, what they said they were going to do. And we have to monitor that. So we have to, if we expect that, we have to inspect it, and we have to have conversations about it. And then at the top, inattention to results. And so often we talk about student results in terms of student achievement and test scores and report cards, right? But there are other results that we might be looking for, whether they are adult outcomes, student outcomes, community outcomes. We have to set goals around the results we want to achieve. They should be based on high expectations, and we're going to have to talk about the results, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever they look like, because then it just becomes a cycle in the work and how you address those issues. So database decision making. This is very important. Now I put up a snapshot of the school report card, the district report card. We're at 3.5 stars. But that's not the only data that we want to look at. We want to look at survey results that we put out to our community, to our parents, to our families. We want to make sure that we are incorporating student voice so that we have that data when we sit down to talk about what it is that they need. So again, the data comes in many forms, but when we make a decision, it has to be based on the data. We shouldn't just be throwing a shot in the dark and trying to figure out what it is that we want to do. We should make those decisions based on the best data that we have in front of us. And I think we have to have alignment. Alignment is critical, and I put up some visuals there in 3 areas. So if we want to talk about making an impact and achievement and progress for students, then we have to make sure we're aligned to the content standards. We have to make sure our instructional practices reflect that. We have to make sure that when we're assessing students, that we're assessing them based on that alignment of how we're instructing and what the standards are. We also need to align to our strategic plan. Now, I know this just kicked off, and there was a report at the last board meeting on some of the great work that's happened around the strategic planning process. And that will be ongoing, but we need to align our work and our vision around the strategic plan. And then I also have up there the teacher and principal evaluation systems. We also need to make sure that we are aligned not only to the professional conduct standards put out by the state of Ohio, but also the rubrics that kind of outline what it is that teachers and leaders should be doing in their buildings. So we need to make sure that in the approach that we're aligned. And sometimes that takes some work to make sure that we are. Common ground. So during the interview process, one of the community members asked about, how are you going to build trust? And I asked everyone this question. I said, how many of you came because you're interested in seeing students be successful? So I ask you that. So you came here tonight to hear me speak, but how many of you are here really because you care about kids and you want them to be successful? Raise your hand. Everyone, right? And how many of you came tonight because not only do you want kids to be successful, but you know that when the school is successful, the community thrives, and you want the school to be successful, the schools to be successful, right? I've just established common ground with everyone in less than 30 seconds about the things that we should talk about. Now, we'll talk about a lot of other things, but our focus has to remain on making sure we get students what they need and making sure that our schools are high quality and high performing. So common ground can be found when we understand what we believe and when we seek to understand what others believe. Has anyone read the 7 Habits, Stephen Covey? Some of you have. I think it's habit 5, seek to understand before being understood. And as part of the role of superintendent, it's very important that I understand what it is the board wants, our leadership wants, our students want, and our community wants. So I will be seeking to understand before I ask you to necessarily understand me. I want to know what it is that we collectively need. So I think it's important I talk to you about what I believe. And these are things that I believe. So first, I believe all people are created with and possess equal worth. Each and every one of us, each and every student that walks through the door. Everyone is created with and possess equal worth. I also believe that, this is my favorite one, the higher the expectation, the greater the achievement. Raise your hand if you aspire to mediocrity. Nobody does. So we have to set high expectations for staff, for students, for community, for the board, for the superintendent. And we have to make those expectations a little bit out of reach so we get people to stretch for them. So high expectations are very important, and that has to be across the board. Lifelong learning enriches the quality of life. In fact, we know that education is the great equalizer. And education for our students heading into the future that nobody really knows what that's going to look like is going to be critically important. It is their pathway to prosperity. And we have an obligation to make sure when they leave our 2 high schools that they have a piece of paper that holds value. And that value will get them to their next step, whether they enroll, enlist, or they're employed. All people can learn more. All people can learn more. Has anyone out there stopped learning? None of us have. And one thing, this next statement used to be a pet peeve because I would often hear staff or community say, that kid can't learn. All kids can learn. All kids can learn. All is in capital letters because I mean all. Everyone who walks through the door, all of them. Given the proper amount of time, supports, and resources, all kids can learn. They don't have to learn at the same time, but they all can learn. The pursuit of personal excellence is worth the commitment. And so our language has to be around, for students and for us, how do we reach a level of personal excellence? What does that look like for us? How do we speak that into fruition for our students? Personal excellence. I also believe that progress requires change and risk. Raise your hand if you like change. Yeah, nobody likes to change. 1, thank you. Look, change is critical if we want to make progress. And in making changes, sometimes you have to take risks. Oftentimes the risks pay off, sometimes they don't. But we're human, so we continue at that cycle of making continuous improvement. But you have to have change, and we have to take risks if we're going to make progress. Teachers, we know this, the research is very clear on this. We have teachers that joined tonight. Good, excellent, thank you for coming. Teachers are the number 1 factor in student progress and achievement. There's no question about that. That is very clearly what the research says. But a growing body of research also says that the building principle can amplify that effect size. So not only is my expectation that we have high quality instructors in the classroom with students, but we also have building leaders who also understand that their role in helping students achieve at higher levels is paramount, and they are the critical key element, not the superintendent. The principals are. And so part of our work is going to be to work with our principals to make sure that we are consistent in that alignment piece so that we can get students to achieve at higher levels. 21st century skills are essential for success. And let me explain that to you. I don't know, is it 22nd century now? Because we've been saying 21st century since the last century. But I shared some information during a commencement speech a couple weeks ago. So next decade, 85% of the jobs that will exist have not been created yet. So what is it we're preparing students for? Yes, we want them to be able to read and do math and think, but the 21st century skill set is critical if they're going to be successful. Because guess what? I don't have my phone, but they can pull out their phone and get any bit of information they want just like that. So the other skill set's going to be critical when they enter a career path, the workforce, college, whatever choice they make. AI and automation are reshaping industries. So if students aren't adaptable, and we're not teaching them how to adapt, they're going to be at a deficit because everyone else will be adapting. Students that enter a career path or the workforce, they're going to change careers, not jobs, careers 5 times over their lifetime. And so you can't just prepare them through through a high-quality educational program K through 12. We have to teach them the other skill set, and that has to be an important part of, and that's an and, not a separation. Because if we are aligned in doing all the things that we know are best practice, when students leave with those diplomas, they'll be prepared, whatever they choose. And so that's on us to do that. Oh, and I want to go back, because this is one of my favorite quotes from Kennedy. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. Certain to miss the future. And so if we keep our eyes looking forward, we won't miss the future. And we have some opportunities here, I think, to make sure and to ensure that students have a future that is bright for them. So I think our opportunities here in the district, at least from my perspective, things that I will certainly be working on and working with others on, is to build and strengthen the relationships that we have with our board, with our students, with our staff, with our families, with our local governments, local business. There's an opportunity there. Because one thing that we know is that we need the support of the community as a whole if we're going to push forward into the future. We need the support. We need to foster partnerships with all stakeholders. There are many partnerships, sort of mentioned a few of those in the first comment, but many partnerships that we can foster with support organizations across our 3 entities to support student learning here in the district. And so that will be something that we'll talk about. What partnerships should we be developing, and how can we better work as a partner with those support organizations? And I think the big opportunity here is storytelling. Now, I put a little asterisk by November. Does anyone know why I put November in there? Yeah. So we're going to be talking about how do we raise additional revenue in the district. I can tell you that the state isn't helping us out a great deal. They're not helping out anyone a great deal in terms of the budget. So we're going to need the support of our whole Parma community. And so one way that I'm fairly certain that can help us do that is to tell the story of what happens for our students in Parma City Schools. There are many things that are happening that I'm fairly certain don't get pushed out publicly, that highlight our programs, our staff, our students. I mean, I'm just learning this coming in the door. Like, we have an outstanding CTE program. We have a great career tech ed program. Does everyone know that? Okay, well, we must be doing a good job on that end. But there's certainly other areas that we need to make sure that we're telling the story. When I think of that, I think about how many college credit plus courses do we have? How many students do we have graduating with a high school diploma and an associate's degree? How many scholarship dollars do our kids net when they're graduating and looking to go to college. Some of us might know those stories, but those stories need to be shared widely. And so we need storytellers. Can't just be me telling the story. But you can help tell the story as well. So we're going to talk about the importance of storytelling, highlighting the stories across the district and our buildings that show the value of a Parma City Schools education. Now, I know this, I pulled this out of the Columbus Dispatch because that's where I was at the time that I got the article, but I know there's a Cleveland.com article about this ranking of the best cities in Ohio. Parma falls right between Mentor and Columbus, number 2 in the state. One thing that I talked about in my previous superintendency, was how can we be more attractive? And I don't mean a nice suit and a tie. How can we be more attractive as a school system to make sure that when families come here, they know that they're going to get a quality education? Folks, clearly people know that Parma is a great place to live, right? But many families come here because not only want a great place to live, they want a great place to raise children and have a school system that provides a quality education. And so I think that's great news, and that's a great story. I don't know how many people have seen the articles about this, but again, something that we should be sharing widely. And so in terms of listening and learning, so I've already scheduled one-on-one discussions with internal staff, leadership members, board members. I've met with 2 of the mayors already. I do have some stakeholders that have reached out that we're going to get together and just get to know each other. I want to know what it is that you are looking for in the schools, in a new superintendent, and how we can support our students in the district. So I'm going to be doing many one-on-ones over the next couple of months, maybe longer. There's a lot of people in Parma. And I'm typically inquiry-based, so I'm going to be asking. You know, I'll tell you about me, but I'm going to ask you, what is your expectation of a superintendent coming into this district in a transition after somebody who's been here for 6, 7, 8 years? What does that look like for you? What do you expect of me? How do you want me to support student learning? How do you want me to address some of the concerns that you have? And so I'm going to be asking those questions when I sit down and have those one-on-one discussions. And I shared this with the board. I think it's very important for the superintendent to be visible. And so I fully intend to be visible. I'm moving here, maybe within the next few weeks. So I'll be living in the community. And I put OWA here not because I referenced the Occupational Work Adjustment Program, but when I was a building principal, I was a middle school principal, I had 600 kids, and I didn't have an assistant. And you can't manage behind a desk, so I did it by OWA, out walking around. Right? So I had to be in the hallways, I had to talk to teachers and kids, because I would tell teachers, don't send kids to my office. I'm not going to be there. But it was easier to manage any situation that came up, because they knew I was going to be somewhere around, sneaking up on them to talk to them or listen to what their concern was that they had in the morning, whatever it is. So my intention is to be visible and participating in whatever events I can get to. So I want to talk about this concept. Is good good enough? So when it comes to our students, is good good enough? So I want you to just think about that for a second as we go through the slides. So, think about our students and our families, the community that we serve. So, regardless of what your role is here this evening, if you're a staff member, a community member, administrator, board member, leadership team member, what percentage of students would have to be to demonstrate success for you to be satisfied? Is it 50, 60, 70? 80, 90? Now, I won't ask for a response, but I want you to reflect for a minute. Think about this really hard for a minute. How many students, what percent of students is good enough for you? Think about what your percentage is and why did you choose that percentage? I'm going to give 30 seconds of sufficient wait time for you to think. So let me tie it to this 1980s Motorola study. Does anyone remember Motorola? I think they're still a company. I'm not sure. Now remember, this is 80s data. But Motorola did this study. They called it the 99.9% quality isn't good enough study. Now remember, they're not a school system. They're a company. They make widgets. We serve kids and families. But here's what they found out. If a system operated at only 99.9% reliability, the annual consequences would include this: 2 million pieces of lost mail each year, 200,000 wrong grades entered annually in schools and universities, 22,000 checks deducted from the wrong bank accounts every hour, 12 babies given to the wrong parents each day. I see some chuckling. No, you don't want to give away those kids. 114,500 mismatched pairs of shoes. 500 incorrect surgical operations each week. 5,000 plus report cards would be sent to the wrong families each term. It's a little different. We have technology today and just press a button. But at 99.9% in the 80s, those would be the consequences. So is good enough? Was your percentage, is that good enough? See, to me, it's not, and we have to do better. So when it comes to our kids, we have to make sure, and I'm going to make sure, my commitment to the board and the community is that we're going to lead with integrity, we're going to build trust, we're going to be engaged and involved, and we're going to do our very best to make sure we're using data to support student learning in the classroom. So my email, you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, and that's the office phone. I'll have to get you a direct line when I actually get in and can do that for you. So I appreciate your attention. I hope I didn't talk too long for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions or. Feel free to just shout them out. Okay, who's got the microphone? Oh, thank you. This way I don't have to repeat it.
Thank you. So I thought this was just to, get to know you a little bit, and, I thank you for the presentation. But I kind of wanted to know, like with Parma having opportunities, why did you choose to come here?
So this is what I told the board. So I knew the position was going to open up because I knew who was coming to Pickerington.
Okay.
And when I look at my years of service and the pathway that I've taken and my experiences and skill set, to me was an immediate match for me in terms of taking a position. I think I've done the levy rodeo before.
I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's
lot of opportunity.
It's going to be a struggle.
It will be a struggle. It's a struggle everywhere, not just in Parma. It's a struggle everywhere. But I will tell you this: when I was at Cardinal Local, superintendent, much smaller district, about 1,100 kids. I was a superintendent. I was the transportation director. I did HR, curriculum, instruction, assessment. I had to do all those things. I didn't drive a bus though. I was not going to get my CDL. And so those experiences, especially leading up to having to pass a levy, and at that time at Cardinal, it had been 25 years for new operating money. And if you didn't know anything about Cardinal, and you can Google it, but I'll tell you, it's in Middlefield, Ohio, and it's in the 4th largest Amish settlement in the world. And so that creates a different dichotomy in terms of who comes to school and who supports school. But after 3 attempts, we were able to pass an operating levy. Second time, we failed by 8 votes. And the third time, it was 12 to 15% maybe that you have to, don't quote my numbers, you'd have to check. But we were able to pass a new operating levy, and we needed that money. So I have some thoughts about the opportunity about the levy. I know people are fatigued by this, but we'll need the support of the community, and we'll need the dollars to continue to offer students a high-quality educational program.
Thank you.
Got one up here. You're going to be running all over.
Okay. What other inventive ways do you have to make the schools better without passing the levy?
Without passing a levy? I don't know if they're inventive, but I'm kind of like, we need to do this based on what we need. So we need to determine what it is that we need for our students, and that runs the gamut from resources, staffing, building space. What do we need? And I don't know that I know exactly what we need yet, but I think the approach has to be, we have to take a needs-based approach. And when I say needs, I really mean needs. Because I'm going to question, if you say, I need this, I'm going to ask, is it really a wish or a want? So I think we have to determine what it is that we need. And we probably have some areas where we know what we need, and we'll continue to do those things. And so I don't know if it's out of the box or inventive, but I think we have to start there, especially knowing that the budget bill hasn't passed yet and doesn't look good for us. And so, do we need to repurpose roles? Do we need to look at exactly what we're spending and determine if we are spending areas that we absolutely need to have right now? Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I have lots of ideas.
Okay, I'm happy to hear. You got my contact information.
I'll send them out.
Other questions? We got a couple back here.
Hi.
Hi.
So I sat briefly on the board, and I am a pretty involved parent. So I come with this question with your presentation, saying that the educators are the number one, forgive me, resource or whatever.
Teachers, number one factor in student achievement and
okay.
progress. That's not me, that's the research.
Yeah, so my question though is in a district where we have like 60% of our kids are in poverty here, and there's a lot of outside factors that are affecting education. Is that something that you look at, outside of the research? Because I mean, I really am cautious to put it all on the educators and not understand that there's a lot at work here.
There is a lot at work, and let me rephrase how I may have described this so that I'm more clear. The research says that having a student in front of a teacher, a high-quality teacher providing the aligned instruction, those students are going to learn, they're going to grow, they're going to achieve at higher levels. That part of the research is clear. So I don't want it to sound like I'm saying it's all on you teachers to get this done. We have to be in this together. So when it comes to the instruction piece of this, and I mentioned, we have to make sure, one thing that we have to do from a leadership level is make sure that we're aligned. Are we teaching to the standards? Because whether we like it or not, we're measured on that report card. And our report card says 3.5, and to me, that's not good enough. So that means we have to lift up the hood, take a peek underneath, look at the data, and determine what those students need. And my guess is students will come across a variety of categories in terms of those subgroups. Poverty levels and other things that will play into, transiency, how many times they may have moved. All those things do play in, no question. So I think it's on us to make sure that we are looking at that data and information and trying to provide everything that we can to support teachers in the classroom so that those kids can learn and grow.
Okay, thank you. Let me get it really quick.
Thank you for your talk, but I want to, if I offend you or anybody, I want to apologize first, okay? We have heard that talk for 30 years, variation changes, and yet it's still an average rating of 3.5. Payroll today is like 85 to 90% of the budget. You keep talking about spending more money and coming to us for more money. Why don't you just get rid of 10 or 15% of the employees and create the money that way? And we are not Beechwood, you referred to. And if we're a partnership with stakeholders, and we're saying we can't afford a levy for 14 years, and what's it cost, $500,000 every year to run it? Why don't you just get rid of 10% and then say, hey, community, we're behind you, and everybody's got to put forth an effort. You're at 3.5% overrating, and it's been that way for 20 years. So why don't you cut rather than spend more?
Yeah, well, let me respond to that. So I'm just walking into this, so I've heard this in terms of our spend, our percentage. I think that's something to look at. Now, what I'll do about that right now, I haven't looked at it. I don't know. Does it make sense to take a look at how we're spending those dollars? And should we be sharing that with the community? Yeah, absolutely, we should be. In terms of asking the community, we don't have a choice. That's what our state and our legislators, that's where we're at. We have to ask for for increases in property taxes to support the schools. So that's why we ask. If there was another way to generate revenue, that'd be great. We'd do that. So my commitment, as I said, is we are going to look at what we need, and if in fact there is some trimming that can happen, yeah, we should look at that and we should do it. That answer everything that you asked?
Hello, my name is Janelle Koza. I work for Resource Cleveland, which is a nonprofit that has had a partnership with the district for 3 years now, supporting the English learner and refugee students at the high school. So I'm glad to hear that you're interested in developing our partnership and growing that as we can. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you intend to engage with the English learner population. There's over 900 in the district. The students, the families, all of their community groups, and the teachers that really need the support as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I didn't realize we had 900 until a couple weeks ago when I heard that. I'm leaving a district that has 1,000 EL learners. And so I think part of the engagement is to partner with our support organizations to make sure that we have a pathway for families to work with us and that we are able to communicate with them in their native language. And again, something I'll have to take a deeper look at, but my approach won't change for a particular population. I think it is going to be engaging in one-on-one discussions, talking about partnerships that we can develop or strengthen, and making sure that we identify what it is we need in that particular lane, and making sure that we can support that and support those students and families.
Hello, my name is Chelsea and I'm a parent in the district. I'm interested in your point on data-driven decision-making, and I'm trying to phrase this. So a trend that I have noticed in the overall social climate is that some people don't trust data. How do you convince people that data is able to be trusted more than their feelings and their perception and their friends' perceptions of reality? Because that's it feels like harder everywhere, including when it comes to talking about the district's future and finances and student success and all this other stuff that, like, how do you not just base decisions on data, but then convince other people that matters, I guess?
Well, first I'd say thoughts, feelings, and perceptions is data. And we should include that as part of our decision-making process. But we also need to look at the hard data. Numbers don't lie. Here's an example. When I think of a very simple example. So let's say we have a class size limit at 25, and we have 100 kids. We don't need 5 teachers, we need 4. And so that's the kind of data that I'm talking about. When it comes to, I'm looking at, I've looked at some of the performance data, the student achievement data, and I see some areas where we have almost 70% of kids not proficient. They're at limited and basic. That's just not good enough. That data isn't made up. I didn't make that up. That comes from the actual assessments that we report to the state. So, and again, I think we have to work at building and establishing trust that the things that we're going to embark on, you can trust that when we're telling you this, that this is what it is. And I've heard, and I know that we need to do a better job at making sure that you also have the same information that we're looking at. We need to be more transparent. So whatever that looks like. And those are discussions I've already started with some senior leaders in the district. Does that answer your
Thanks.
question?
I look forward to seeing how this all goes.
Yep. Thank you.
Welcome to Parma, Dr. Hunt.
Thank you.
Wish you much success. Your success is our students' success and our schools and our community. So best wishes for all that you've shared with us tonight coming to reality. I and my 4 children are proud graduates of Normandy High School. And one of my kids lives on another continent, one lives in another state, but we happen to have all been together the last week or two and happen to have had some very robust conversations about education and in particular AI and the changes that are coming or that are here already and are exponentially going to be in our face. As you referenced, 85% of the jobs in 10 years don't exist right now. So we've talked a lot about that, and I am wondering what your thoughts are on the differences in education because of these huge changes in technology and how you plan to address that moving forward, serving our students.
Great question. So, AI is ever evolving and everyone has access to it, including our students. And so, and I'm not sure where we are in terms of a district as far as technology, the use of those tools, and I'll call them tools, because if we kind of control how we use those things, those tools, then we have a better shot at making sure that they're used for teaching and learning. So I think we're going to need to have a deeper discussion specifically about AI. I don't know about technology. I think we're 1-to-1 in the district, and students are using technology, teachers are using technology, but we definitely need to talk about moving out of the 21st century with our technology and how we can better harness its power for student learning and achievement. And that's a bigger conversation, and I don't know if I have a specific, strategy to share with you tonight, but again, things that we've talked about briefly in my short time meeting with people.
Well, I'm guessing that whatever we may think today, in a year or 2 years, or certainly 3, 4, 5 years, is going to be a whole different kind of situation that we're going to have to address. And that's going to require a lot of adaptation.
Yeah.
And
so I'll throw on the sidecar of the conversation about 21st century skills. So not only should we be teaching kids how to read, write, communicate, do math, but we also have to teach them those 21st century skills. We have to make sure kids understand how to work with other people, how to adapt, how to pivot, how to problem solve with a group of people, and how they can use those tools to help them do that. But to me, it goes hand in hand. The thing about learning is when our kids leave us and they end up in a career path or job, whatever it is, they're going to have to continue to learn. So I don't know how many. I know I've heard this because I also have 3 young adult children who I'm going to get out of school and I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to make $70,000 a year. That's great. Are you going to go to school? How are you going to do that? So you either need a degree, and even if you don't get a degree, you can be on a career path to make those kinds of salaries. But if you want to move up, if you want to be the manager, the supervisor. You have to continue to learn. So you're going to be going through a credential program, or you're going to be licensed, so the learning doesn't stop. And I think that fits into that skill set. We have to continue, we have to build into the mindset of our students that it's about lifelong learning and making sure that you can use those skills, because the other stuff you pull out your phone, I can do math on my calculator. Yeah.
I don't mean to belabor this.
No, go ahead.
I'll just say one more thing about this. I appreciate that need to teach those skills to our students, of course. What I'm concerned about, I guess, and I'm focusing on with this question, is when they get that $70,000 job, is it going to be there the next year?
Yeah.
Is it going to disappear? What is the opportunity for students to expand their skills in a way that adapts to many other possibilities that we don't even know what they are right now?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a different thing to send your kid to college and prepare for something and graduate, and in 2 years it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
That's a scary kind of scenario to me for preparing our students for the future. So.
Thank you. Sounds like a good strategic planning topic. Other questions? Thought I saw some other hands.
Any more questions?
Besides the elephant in the room of money, what are your expectations out of the community towards the schools in the future?
Well, I hope you'll commit. I don't want you to buy in yet, but I hope you'll commit to the work that we're going to do and to supporting the efforts that we're going to undertake to support students in the district. My expectation is just a commitment. You don't have to buy into anything. Let's get to the results. So after a year, if we're getting results based on some of the things that we've set into motion, then consider buying into like this is the way things should happen. But I think initially just a commitment and be willing to engage. I'm going to be willing to engage. You can have a completely opposite thought, idea, lens, perspective. Those things don't bother me. I want to have those discussions because it will help us collectively and as a district to be better. So I want to hear those things so that, if it's something we need to address or talk about, that we can do that, either through the administration, through our Board of Education. So for me, it's just about the commitment. Just make the commitment.
To tag with that, what's the communication that you deal with when you talk to the community? Which way do you do?
So I've got some thoughts on how to do that. I'm going to go back to the storytelling. So you can Google me and get on the Pickerington site. I started, probably a couple of months ago, a little snippet that we post on YouTube and the socials. They call it Did You Know? And sometimes it highlights the student program. We did something on the preschool. We talked about generating operating levy money. So for me, that's going to be a primary way, but also the other, typical ways, emails and email blasts. And again, I'll have to learn what we have in place, but I intend to make sure that when we talked about the communication piece, one is my commitment to the board is to communicate with them. They don't like surprises, neither do I. So I'm going to make sure that they're fully informed on things that are happening around the district. Same at the building level and same with the community. So if something's happening out there that reaches a level that we need to inform you, we'll do that in some way, shape, or form, whether that's an email blast or a communication through a dialer, whatever we have. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
As a parent of 6 children, 2 that are within the district and 1 that will be starting, I have a question in regards to the school of choice program that we hold right now. I'm dealing with my situation personally, I have a kindergartner that's going into first grade at Green Valley.
Okay.
And now I'm being told that my daughter is being forced to Thorough Park for KLA. How am I supposed to be in two places at once to pick up two kids and being told in the back end from the district that senior leadership is changing things and we won't know till August? How are we supposed to wait till August to know those things?
Well, I don't know enough about your particular situation to really comment on what it is we should do, could do, might do, but I'm happy to talk to you about it.
I guess for all families though as a whole, right? Like, I guess for me, like when my son went to Green Valley, his homeschool is John Muir.
Okay.
We were told that we were grandfathered in, right? And now all of a sudden these changes are coming that I'm being told that, hey, he might be pushed back. So I can't be the only family that's going to be told, hey, you might have to go back to your homeschool. Which, how does my son attend a school for 2 years, build these relationships not only with his peers, but also with the staff, and then have to go learn it somewhere else? And I guess that's not only my scare again, but the rest of us.
I don't know enough about our choice program, how students are placed, but I'm happy to talk about your particular situation if you want to do that so that I have more information. It would be impossible for me to give you an answer right now, but I'm happy to get you an answer.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Good?
Okay, I'm not seeing other hands go up. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out tonight. Really do appreciate it. Happy to talk to each and every one of you if you have the opportunity. I'll make sure that we make time for that. So I don't know, Mr. Board President, Boss, would you like to say something?
Hey, thank you everybody for coming. We're going to close the meeting. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Thank you for coming to the meeting tonight. Really appreciate it. I was hoping for a little bit more participation. Do I? Yes. I have to talk into this. Did you guys all hear me before? Yeah, I think so. Okay. We're going to go close this meeting. Thank you so much for coming. Just bring them up. He's good. All right. Okay, I move to adopt resolution 2025-06-271 to adjourn this meeting. Second. We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2025-06-271. Roll call, please. Mr. Vaughn. Yes.
Mr. Ruda. Yes.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.